Mayor, do you want us to wear masks or you want us?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I think we're all vaccinated. We're
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
away from each other. We're plenty of feet away from people here. We're going to be a couple minutes late getting off the ground here tonight, but I thank you, everybody, for coming here on purpose and in person. Thank you. Means a lot. It feels really strange, doesn't it?
It feels very weird.
It's been 15 months since we've been here together, so. Chief's trying to get all the sign-in sheets together, and there were a number of them, so we'll just give it a second. We got a pretty big group. In fact, we're missing one tonight. So there's 6 counselors. Well, this is our village attorney and our village administrator. And that's our clerk. Clerk.
Oh, okay.
All right. How are we doing, Aaron? Are we ready? Okay. All right. Thank you for coming to this in-person and Zoom meeting, Village of Corrales Governing Body regular meeting for June 15th, 2021. I called the meeting to order, and now we're going to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
This will be an awful.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, we're all in sync.
I know that. Hey, that was a little better than our Zoom versions, but okay. All right, I'm now going to call the roll. Counselor Waldman,
Here.
Counselor Murray,
Here.
Counselor Burkett will not be able to join us this evening. Counselor Lucero,
Here.
Counselor Knight, here. Counselor Parker.
Here.
Thank you. All right. The next item is going to be the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a motion and a second. I think because it's the agenda and we're all in person, this is one of the few motions we can do by affirmation. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been approved. So we are now going to move into the administrator's report. Administrator Curry?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
I'm going to start off with COVID updated directly from.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Ron. I think you're going to need to.
Anyway, the report from Tanya on the COVID,
Thank you.
really pushing to get sent statewide this week. We have to reach it by midnight on June 17th to be vaccinated by 7/2021. These are by fully looking at the entire state. Corrales itself shows 5,086 fully vaccinated and 285 partial vaccinated. And these numbers do not reflect persons who may have been vaccinated fully or partially out of state or in state with a provider not using the New Mexico Department of Health portal. DOH has all providers, including Corrales, validating immunization portal and online registration portal match. So you can go to their website to make sure their full vaccination record is on file. You can also register at the website for prize drawings of 250,000 grand prize million. Grand prize is 5 million. So right now in Sandoval County is 65.2% fully vaccinated. That out of 76, that's 76,307 persons. 75.2% have at least one dose of the vaccine. The state is at 67.4 partially vaccinated with 58.5% fully vaccinated. So we're 1.5 in the red. Corrales is at 330 cases with 2 new cases Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. The 10-day case count is at 3. 14-day case count is at 4. And vaccine clinics still running. Next clinic will be Wednesday evening. Check to make sure that whether that's tomorrow evening or a week from Wednesday. And then tomorrow, the state officials are going to be having another COVID update at 1:00. And you can look at that on the UT or the New Mexico Department of Health Facebook page. Okay, then the next thing I would like to ask, if there's no questions on that, on the COVID, I'd ask Chief Martinez to give an update on his work and his crew's work over the fire regarding this last weekend, and also talk a little bit about fireworks or the lack thereof.
First of all, I'd like to give Chief a big round of applause. He and his crews and with the help of the police department and everybody else really saved our bacon on Sunday. We really appreciate it.
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you. Ron, Mayor, Councilors. As you're probably aware, we had a pretty good size structure fire over the weekend. It involved a property with a structure. We were able to suppress the structure, save the structure. The property is about a little over 1 acre. And I don't know how to describe this, but it was just full of just vehicles and tractors and boats and just different things. And some of them had significant value to them. We're talking antique cars and trucks, etc. When we received the call, it was just like the whole acre was on fire with absolutely no warning. It spread. Talking to the homeowners, the fire spread rapidly through their acre, igniting everything it possibly could. And the contributing factor there was the cotton, the dry cotton, the wind blowing. And so we were trying to stress to everyone the importance of being safe around the cotton. You see it. I've been coordinating with the paving company to keep wetting the roads along the road as they're using the paving equipment. But the fire was well involved. We had to request multiple agencies to assist us. We had Rio Rancho, Sandoval County, Albuquerque Fire, Bernalillo County. We had multiple police agencies. We had local Corrales Police, we had state police, we had Rio Rancho Police, and I believe SO. And it took all of our efforts to just make sure that we coordinated keeping the citizens safe, keeping them out of the area, and any sort of potential evacuation we already had, planned for, but we didn't have to execute. So we kept the fire contained to the property itself. Some adjoining properties sustained some damage, but it didn't get to their animals or their structure. So it was a long day, long, hot day. We had enough personnel so we could recycle and make sure they stay hydrated. But I'll stand for any questions pertaining to the incident, if you have any.
Any counselors have a question for the chief?
I
I have a question. I wondered if you could help me. We talked about the fact that the person that inadvertently started this fire was welding. And I know that many of us have neighbors or people close to us that might be doing things that involve power tools or welding or whatever. What can we do to try to keep somebody from accidentally setting a fire, just not thinking about it?
Yeah, right now I don't know how to describe it. It's just so explosive out there. It's so hot, it's dry, relative humidities, any sort of spark producing equipment, chains on your trailer, grinders, welders, just don't use them if you don't have to. Make sure you wet the area around if you have to, if you're working and have to weld, but even a cigarette, fireworks, anything right now is just very, very dangerous. And I know, Mary, you and I had talked about this. I'd like to do maybe some PSAs, start shooting it over the website, our Twitter, maybe next door, just sending the importance of just think before you do anything. Even hooking up your trailer to go to the landfill. If your chains are dragging on Corrales Road, they could produce spark and catch cotton, and that cotton could spread for thousands of feet. I mean, it's just like gasoline. So, yeah. And then as we go in the future, maybe we could look at some sort of permit process where there's commercial businesses and stuff coming into Corrales during these times of danger with severe drought and heat, that they'd have to go through a permit process.
Thank you. Councilor Murray, you have a
Yeah,
question?
thank you, Mayor. Chief, did you have sufficient water resources to, with the tankers and so forth to express this?
Councilor Murray, Mayor. Yes, I mean, and anytime we have an incident like this, it takes a little while to set up your portable tanks. And when I say a while, I mean, you're talking 5 minutes, you know, but you're putting water on the fire as you're setting up. And we requested additional tankers. So we had, just on Gossett Road alone, we had 5 tankers in rotation shuttling water. And on Meadowlark, because I assigned an engine company and crew to protect the house to the north, they had 2 tankers assigned to that side. So we had a total of 7 tanker trucks. They all vary in size from 1,500 to, I think the largest was like 3,000 gallons. And they all filled up at the rec center hydrant site. So we had sufficient water at the rec center, the hydrants. I did like a debrief with some of the tanker operators. They were able to fill up their trucks in a minute. So we were producing, you know, really good volumes and pressure on that system. So again, thank you for the support in trying to, you know, build our fire suppression system. You know, so we're very thankful it was in a close proximity.
Thank you, Chief.
As far as fireworks, I know the governor put out an executive order encouraging municipalities to restrict or ban fireworks. It's kind of misleading. I wish we could ban fireworks. We've tried it in the past. Our attorney said no. Well, former attorneys. Here's
Here's a way to get some
it's
points.
very, and we have village council here and he knows the laws better than I do, but my understanding is we can only restrict the use of certain fireworks, and our ordinance is already very restrictive. So in the years past, the village council had approved a very strong ordinance, and we're very proud to have that ordinance that is year round. So it's already very restrictive. If we could say that you can be in possession of fireworks and you can't light them would be nice, but because I'm desperate. But right now we're just going to be restrictive. We're going to be out on patrol. We don't sell fireworks in Corrales. I don't think we've ever have since my career here, which is good. But that would require a permit, and they have a certain time frame to submit their permit to the clerk, and then I have to inspect, and we haven't received anything as far as sale of fireworks in Corrales. And absolutely fireworks are not allowed anytime or any type or any sort of ignition in our bosque because of the preserve. So,
Right. And I seem to recall that our safety signs this time of year sort of say no fireworks. So,
yeah. So if citizens call and ask what the rules are, I tell them, please don't use them, wait until it rains. But yeah, we'll be on patrol, but very, very dangerous time right now for any kind of safe and sane firework or match or any sort of ignition source. So,
thank you.
and we're in a burn ban, as you are well aware. So, okay. Thank you, Mayor, Councilor.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Chief. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to ask Michael Chavez to just come up here for any questions we would have. I just wanted to report to the council and to those of you who are interested, you may have noticed our road is being repaved. And one of the things that was most interesting to us is that we get our known wishes for crosswalks and equestrian crossings better situated and restriped, if you will. So Michael has done a great job. He and I rode Corrales Road a couple of times and looked at all the particular equestrian crossings and crosswalk. And then Michael provided a very comprehensive report to Margaret at the state DOT. And so we met this morning via Zoom and went through every recommendation that Michael has come up with, and they're looking at them and they're committing to us that they want to get those down as soon as possible after the road is repaved. Now, what soon as possible maybe for me may be different than them. But the real thing that they're trying to accomplish at this point is get the money encumbered for the equestrian crossings and the updated equestrian crossings and the updated people crossings. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and if you've got any questions on our phone call, we'll try to answer. But I wanted Michael to just kind of give a breakdown or an update on the road that is being repaved. Just so you'll know, every morning at 10 o'clock, I get a report from Michael, from Chief Anthony, Chief Vic, and so that the mayor and the clerk and I all have a knowing what's going on at that time of day and what they're doing. And we also have good communications with the project manager, and Michael can talk a little bit about that. But so I'll turn it over to Michael right now.
Mayor, councilors, as you know, we're getting our road paved. We got off to a pretty rocky start. They actually got a half a mile today.
Oh, good.
So they went from Villa Oriada on the northbound lane to Chaparral. They'll probably tomorrow be able to match that up, if not a little farther. Because this morning they had actually dropped back and repaired a couple of bad areas. They're having some issues with the way the old road is deteriorated underneath. So they're having to deal with that. But I think all of our traffic control plan, everything's coming into order. I think everything's going to work.
So what do you estimate? I mean, I know that you've been trying to work with everybody and talk about it. It seems like the delays, what are the delays that you're seeing?
They had a equipment breakdown. The beginning of the project over there at Cabezon, they actually cleared that up because of all the turning lanes. So it's kind of a back and forth process. So from here on out, I see some pretty smooth sailing for them. So they should be doing pretty good.
Okay.
A half a mile today. They still think they can get a mile a day.
Okay, well, I'm not shocked to find out that the quality of the road underneath was not quite as good as they had hoped. Do any of the counselors have additional questions for Michael? Yes, Councilor Waldman, and then I'll get to you.
Yeah, just a quick one. Riding the surface as we see it now in that first half mile or so, not quite as smooth as Loma Larga. Is that the final product that we can expect, or might it?
That'll be the final project. And one reason for that is because when you go in and rebuild the road, you'll remove everything and then you go in and start with your base. So you compact your base and you pretty much get it as smooth as possible. So when your machine rides on that, that's what gives you your smooth base. This road they're dealing with, because they don't know what's under that, it's a little bit rougher. And that's why they dropped back and repaired a couple areas, because it was just a little too rough. But that'll be what we end up with.
Thank you.
Councilor Moon?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chavez, noticed yesterday I had the pleasure of having to wait for my road to get opened up as they came by, but I noticed the trucks were not proceeding through the village. It looked like they were turning around at the gas station. So, I mean, I think once you get past the gas station, there's not going to be many places to turn around, but I just want to make sure that, are we on board with the trucks proceeding through the village?
Oh, yes, we are, Councilor Murray, Councilor Mayor. What happened is they're going to go ahead and turn around at our yard instead of having to go all the way around until they reach that area. And it just cuts down on their time and their hauling, which is what we want. We want them to go fast as possible. They're also staging there in the mornings. So they,
Your area, Public Works.
Yes. So what they're doing is they're having all their trucks show up empty. That way they're not waiting for them to fill, and they still are having trouble getting trucks. So that should pick up too. As far as the gas station, what I was explained to was one of them stopped to get a soda. So I don't think they're turning around. Maybe they turned around, but that's what. And they are also using the growers market.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Michael. I think we all appreciate your good temperament in trying to handle all of this. And we're in week 2, and I think at least it seems like it's getting, I hate to say that because something will go wrong. But,
Well, I want to help them.
I'm hopeful. We live in hope. We live in hope. I know. So thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to ask Aaron to talk just a little bit. I know we had some concerns brought up about backing up some of our computer processes. So I'd just like Aaron to give just a brief little presentation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. I know that we received some concerns and specifically to the accounting policy about how we back up. Typically what we do is right now our Abila software is all in the cloud. It's completely remote. So if our, God forbid the building burnt down today, we would have no issue. As we move into Tyler, it's a hybrid system. We have some on site, some on the cloud. And the way that it's supposed to be set up and the way that they're confirming that it's set up is that we have a physical backup in the actual server itself. And then every week we get a cloud upload, essentially, that we can always roll back to in the case of an issue. Obviously, we lose a week worth of work in that, but that's better than losing everything. And so what another option for us is we could get a second server on a secondary site. That's just a matter of money in terms of if we really wanted to spend some big bucks, probably around 30,000 minimum to get a second server to do a remote on-site backup, like a physical backup, sorry, not on-site, a remote physical backup. We could do that. It's up to the council about how we want to do that. If they think it's a good idea, we certainly could look into it. But as it stands right now, I'm fairly confident that what we have is very sufficient for what our needs are, because we're not necessarily storing tons and tons of data at a time. Where we are storing tons and tons of data is its own separate system. So things like police body cameras, those are now going to be on their own system. And so we won't have the same issue where we're storing a bunch of data that needs to be purged after a certain amount of time or anything like that. It's all basically under our control, and that automatic backup is already set up so that we don't physically have to do it, and it's out of our hands. Because just day to day, if I had to remember to back up, there's going to be days I forget, versus if it just does it for me, then that's set up. So I can stand for any questions, but that's just the kind of the long and short of it.
Question, Councilor Waldman?
Yes, Aaron, I'm curious. The Colonial Pipeline and the JBS, were they also stored in the cloud? Do you know?
That I don't know, to be 100% honest.
I just wondering how vulnerable it might be.
Right. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, Councilor.
Would you like him to try to find out for you? Councilor Waldman?
Sorry?
Would you like him to try to find out for
If you
you?
could,
Yeah.
I'm just a little concerned as Councilor Murray is as well.
Sure.
I like his idea of an off-site, backup system.
Okay.
If we don't need that, that's fine.
Right.
But if you could find out about the cloud situation.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you.
Council.
Anybody else have a question for Aaron? Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. I'd like to visit a little bit now about the New Mexico Local Government Investment Pool, or LGIP. I think all of you here are familiar with some of the actions that we've taken in the last year. As you may remember, we, at the beginning of last calendar year, we initiated a forensic audit using the McCard firm, and they derived from that where the monies came from and how it got to be that size. And so just briefly, the New Mexico Local Government Investment Pool, or LGIP, is legislative created by the State Treasurer's Office for the use and benefit of New Mexico communities. The primary investment activities of the LGIP are to offer safety, provide liquidity, and generate returns on participating entities, such as us. The fund is rated AAA by S&P, which is the highest principal stability fund rating assigned by S&P. Municipalities and other local governments, including the Village of Corrales, voluntarily remit money to the State Treasurer's Office for professional management on a pooled basis. The village currently has invested $4,360,525.21 in the LGIP. These funds are held in the LGIP. The funds that are up there, they're unrestricted. and can be used for any governmental purpose or held in reserve above and beyond what our statutory requirement is to have reserves. Give you an example of some of the interest rates that have gone up and down. In October of 19, which was FY 20, for the month of October, we had at a 1.9% rate, we collected $7,744 in interest. In October of 20, FY 21, on the same amount of money, it was actually probably a little more money at that point, we collected at the interest rate of 0.14%. We collected a total amount of $519.39, which was a total difference. It's looking like the total FY 20 interest rate that we acquired from the LGIP was right at $70,171. So far this fiscal year, and there's month of June hasn't come yet, but instead of the 70,171 that we had last year, our total so far this year is $5,157.42. So it's down about 90% because of the interest rates. The interest rates, I anticipate, will go back up, but that's kind of an overview of some of the examples that we've had in the LGIP. So what the administration is recommending, given the uncertainty of the current environment, is that the village would retain approximately 60% of the funds in the LGIP, which is equivalent to $2,616,315. That particular amount, I would call it, and Jill and I talked about this, I'd call it additional reserve over our belief what is 12.5% is required for us to have. And that would be equivalent to about 44% if we withheld 60% or set aside 60% not to spend. That would be equivalent to about 44% of the village current budget of $5,900,000. So the village council may wish to expend all or a portion of the remainder of the funds in the LGIP for purposes such as the rec complex or water or waste projects. In addition to the LGIP funds, the village also will have federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, which we anticipate to be something over $2 million. Have general obligation bond proceeds and other state and local funds for projects. So what I would recommend, and I would ask that you would share with me and Aaron your thoughts on capital expenditures idea so that we can look at putting that, the council can look at putting that into a policy on how and what you would spend money on. And you can develop this policy any way you want to, but it's important that your ideas come in, whether you want to spend them, you know, on a capital project, whether you want to talk about buying property, whether you want to talk about, you know, paving a road someplace that doesn't have the money. But it's important, I believe, and I'm recommending to the council, is that at the next meeting, we present to you a policy for your consideration on how you want to spend and what categories you want to be able to spend this money on. These are decisions that you will make, your decision to decide how much money is set aside, whether it's 60% that the administration is recommending or it's something else. Those are your decisions. But what I would ask is that prior to the next meeting, you send to me and to Aaron what you would like to see in the way of policies that we could put forward a resolution for you to look at the next meeting. But I just think from a prudent point of view, we should look at saving as much as possible. And we also should have fairly definitive policies on how much and what we would want to spend that money on. So that we have that to be able to justify any expenditures that you do decide to make or the amount that you want to set aside. So that would be my suggestion, that we look at this from a policy point of view for a resolution at the next meeting and ask you to send your thoughts, whether it's particular purchases you think that should be made or how this policy should be developed. And we'll take your input and put it together with some of the things that we've been talking about and present that to you for you to either amend or vote on or whatever you want to do with it. So Mayor, if there's any questions?
Yes, Counselor Knight?
Yeah, I just had one quick question. We found out about this $4 million not too long ago. What other reserves did we have before we knew about the 4 million?
Counselor, to the best of my knowledge, the only reserves that I'm aware of were what we statutorily have to have, which is around the 12% number.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up,
I'm sorry, don't
sorry.
forget to, you may speak.
thank you. I'm used to Zoom, so.
I know.
It's nice to
So-
see you.
As well. So we set aside 12% now of the budget.
12, I think it's 12.5, but somewhere around in there, yeah.
Okay, so this would be an additional 60%.
Right.
So this would be 72%.
No, that's not what you mean, is it? You just
No.
mean it would, yeah.
You know,
It
we're
would be
required to have the 12.
12%.
But just looking at, from that prudent point of view, I'm just recommending that we look at 60% as a number that we have as a percentage of our total budget. Just, you know, just being as cautious and prudent
Sure.
as I can. And that decision is the council's, of course, but that's my recommendation.
I would like to jump in here that I'm a board member for the New Mexico Municipal League, and that executive director wants them to get 1.5 times their budget as a reserve. Now, they don't have the revenue sources that we have. That's true. But they've gotten way down. Just a couple of years ago, they had almost $3 million, and now they're like, like 800,000. And they've also found through an audit that they don't have a revenue source they thought they had. So I think what the administration is urging is just that we think about it as a cushion. I think our bond attorney has explained that having a healthy reserve also makes us look pretty good to the rating agencies, the New Mexico Finance Authority. And 44% of a one-year budget is still, a little under half. So I know it sounds like a lot of money, but I want you all to think about it and we would never want to use it for recurring expenses. So these are project kinds of things, I think, are things that we feel, the council feels would really be in the benefit of the whole community and a really good thing to spend. So.
And Mayor, to add to what you say, as far as not using recurring expenses, things like that, I think that would be important to have that in whatever policy that the council adopts.
I mean, it's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
I was looking at charts for the state, and some municipalities are really underwater, but we are not. So, in fact, we had a 0.1, my friends, increase in our GRT over the last pandemic era.
Wow.
It's kind of a miracle considering the size of our business district, but just saying that things go up and down, and so it's a great problem to have, and I think we need to just think about what the opportunities are. Anyone else? Okay. So I expect every one of the counselors will be busy sending their wish lists over, and we'll have an interesting discussion and hopefully agenda item next time. The department reports were also all included. Do any of the counselors have questions for any of the department heads?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Murray.
thank you, Mayor. Does that include Sandy Rasmussen's?
She was going to come up and speak at the Correlenos Forum.
Okay, well,
on
I can wait then.
Is that
'cause
okay?
Yeah.
Unless you want her to address the report, she could do that now. You want to come on up, Sandy? Go ahead. Sandy Rasmussen, otherwise known as Short Timer.
I know, retiring when you're 70, you're not giving it your all. Yes, Councilor Murray. But I can take it off to talk?
Sure.
Can
Go
I?
ahead.
Because he
Yes,
said
you
so. Okay, thank you. I can breathe for a minute. So Counselor Murray, you had a question?
Well, yeah, I think what I'm looking for is the Pathways project. Is there any way we can help you get that off the ground?
The what project?
Pathways are the, I mean, it seems to me that's kind of an ongoing thing.
It's an ongoing thing, and I think we were making strides. What do you think is holding us back, Administrator?
Let me guess.
My understanding, so yes, this is my last council meeting. So my understanding is we're still going to do the north end, right? But we just had that little pinch place. So if we can get DOT to somehow overlook the pinch place, we'd have a section we could do. We don't have money. Maybe some of the,
We do, and that's a good question, because we have the design money, right?
Right.
So they can do the construction plans. What we are missing, we've got a section all pretty
All
much that we
picked
can
out.
do, but the construction costs might be something that we could do to get that third done. Or we could ask for it as capital outlay. Our difficulty in the past is we have not been able to really interest our legislators, particularly in funding this project. So that's iffy. But again, yeah, there could be a source of money to cover the actual construction.
construction, yeah.
Do you have an estimated cost of construction?
No, we don't, because we don't have the plans drawn yet, because we were going to do it down by Hannah and Nate's, then we decided there's a bigger problem up at the north end because
Wasn't it around $300,000?
at one time, but that was years ago and everything's a little more expensive now. So I don't know. And if we get to a point in that tight spot, we have to ask somebody to move their fence, that would be added cost to that first section. But I mean, there's going to be something everywhere we go, but I think it's overcomable. I hope, with everybody's support. That can be my goal in retirement.
Mayor,
Get a section of the pathway done. But,
Mayor-
and so can I just say thank you now to the council and everybody for being so supportive. It's my Main Street job. And you've been great to work with.
Do you have an announcement you'd like to make about?
Who the new person is? I know the answer to that question. It's Angela Gutierrez. She lives here in the village. She's been on our board this year, which has been a rough year for us as well as you all because the communication isn't the same. Her husband, Marcos Gutierrez, owns the vet clinic up the road a piece. And I think that she will do a fine job. And she's younger than me, so I'm excited. That was my criteria. You had to be younger because we got a new board right before the pandemic hit. And I think a lot of good things are going to come out of that board and working with the village. So be nice to them all. And I'm not leaving town, so I'm sure you'll see me somewhere.
Anybody else have a question for Sandy before we let her go?
Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to add to what she said as far as most of you know, we've had a challenge with this project because of some of the DOT requirements. And I think I'm going to be optimistic here that I think with the road construction and the communication that we're having now with DOT, like the meeting that Michael and I had this morning, where we specifically talked about the crosswalks and some of the things that aren't necessarily specific to the pathway, but they were saying that maybe this delay in getting the crosswalks and the equestrian crossings in there was okay because the road is going to get repaved and they won't have to go back and pull all those crossings up again. So my optimism as far as keeping this project going forward is that we've authorized Steve Grohlman to go ahead and finish the drawings out and have them available by the end of the year. And we've committed to that from a price point of view as well. And we've had meetings with some of the folks that have been concerned about donations that have been made. And that was a positive meeting, I felt. But again, I think the highway department at this point is going to listen to us a little better than they have in the past. So that's my little light bulb of optimism.
And I agree with Administrator Curry that in the last year, I think the communication, at least on the PAR project, they seem to listen, whether they're going to do, I don't know, but they listen. And I think that's a big step. So hopefully soon, Counselor Murray.
Counselor Waldman?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the state legislators have not been supportive to this point, if there's some way we can get a ballpark figure and go to them, in the fall prior to the session, so they can divide up, whatever money they may have.
Oh, of course, it would be on our ICIP list. It's been on our ICIP list. We can have a much longer discussion about what their concerns are. And, Sandy can probably address.
And I think that getting these construction drawings is paramount in getting that number, because if you don't know what you're building, you don't know what it's going to cost. We're going to do it with crusher fine. I think DOT has given us the okay to go on that. So I think that's going to be more palatable to the citizens. It'll still provide a surface for ADA issues, but it won't look like a sidewalk with a curb and gutter that won't go anywhere.
We did get a $75,000 award from one of our legislators, Representative Damon Eli, but that was clawed back because of the, so, we'll try again, and they all know.
They do, and I think the cooperation between Main Street and the village, knowing that that's a good relationship, helps too.
We do have a different state senator too.
We do that too.
She may
Uh-huh.
not be, we haven't really had a chance to sit and talk about it.
Right.
So she may be more favorable toward the project.
So you'll still see me around, guys, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Are there any other questions for the department heads concerning their reports? All right, we're going to move on then to Counselor's Forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Counselor Knight.
I just wanted to encourage people to go to Williams Pond and see the new shade structure that Sybil Kaiser had put up in memory of her husband. It is absolutely beautiful. It is a very special piece of artwork, and I think we're very lucky to have it in our village. So if you get a chance, make sure you head down there and look at it.
Councilor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've just got 3 items. So one of the things that when Sandy Rasmussen and Michael Chavis and I were out with the DOT, canvassing the road, we got to discussing about the ponding issue over around Hen and Nate's. And my understanding was that, according to Michael, was that there was at one time a project to run that pond and that pipe over to the interior drain. I'm just curious, is that something that we could look at again? My understanding was also that they had everything looked like it was going to be a go, and then somebody objected to it.
Why don't we have a meeting, since this isn't for discussion or debate this item, but why don't you come over and I'll tell you everything I know about that story with the long beard.
Okay. Then also over on West Ella and Loma Larga, I noticed that as I was having to drive around waiting for my road to open up, there's no crosswalk striping at that area. There's 2 signs, they're present, but no striping at all along the roadway, which there is if you go further south. You notice the crosswalks.
Which crossing is that?
It's on West Ella.
Oh, sure.
I
Okay.
think there are 2 signs there. And then also, I just wanted to follow up. I had asked a question at the last meeting about the Zoom chat. Is that a violation of the Open Meetings Act? And I haven't heard anything back, but I'm just curious if the attorney was aware of that. Surprise.
So I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of the question. Do you want to?
Okay, well, the question was at the last meeting was, and we were doing Zoom, and we have the chat feature on Zoom itself. If there is communication between a party and the public to one of the council members via the chat feature, is that a violation of the Open Meetings Act?
Well, it's problematic in many ways. Primarily, if it's quasi-judicial, then you really shouldn't be doing that communication either by text or emails or anything else with anyone while you're acting as hearing officers on a land use case. If it's legislative, it's less problematic. The issue that you hit on is the Open Meetings Act. So any communication that is going to be made to the body should happen in the meeting. But just as there used to be people ducking down behind the dais and whispering back and forth. This is just a newer version of that. It's going to happen. But I mean, the point is, don't do any business except in public, and you should be okay.
If they disclose it, if something comes in and say we disclose it, is that okay, or is it?
Well, I would refrain from taking any texts and emails from folks. Just invite them to participate in the meeting if they wish to. If you're communicating about logistical things like the meeting went down on Zoom, then that's different. But if it has to do with the public business, have people bring that business to the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Of course. Anyone else for the counselors forum? I did go down to see the. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's really, really nice. Do we have anyone else for the Coriolanus forum? Yes.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we do have a couple people signed up for the Coriolanus forum tonight. The first on the list is going to be Jen Hashimoto.
Hi, I'm Joan Hashimoto. I live at 485 East La Entrada. I would like to take a few moments to thank Chief Manja Capra and Chief Martinez for some extraordinary personnel that they have working under them. See you. On the morning of May 23rd, my big puppy decided to bolt after a pheasant or something while I was walking him in the bosque, leaving me badly injured in a heap on the path. A police officer was the first official to arrive on the scene on the levee. He immediately tried to phone my husband several times. When he couldn't reach him, he asked another on-duty officer to go ring my doorbell to see if he was at home. Fred was out on a run without his cell. The fire department crew that took care of me was very kind and professional. They kept me talking while waiting for a transport ambulance to take my mind off of the pain. The folk from both departments could not have been kinder, and I offer my heartfelt thanks and know that Corrales is extremely lucky to have you. Thank you. Thank you.
Next on the list is Paul Matthew.
Mayor, council, this is all recorded on record. Susan, I love you. Happy anniversary. It's been a while since I've done one of these. My background, I live at 5094 Corrales Road, and I'm here kind of representing the adjoining property owners to SDP 2104. We have several concerns about the way that project's been handled, both from a planning standpoint as well as a building permit process with the state and with the village. And in our perspective, there's been very little oversight, and the applicant that now has a site development plan into the P&Z tomorrow has constantly changed their end goal. And my concern is not necessarily the specific issue, but it's the process and way planning happens within the village. My background is in architecture, planning, and construction. And this is one of the few municipalities that the burden of information falls on the landowner versus the applicant. Most other municipalities request that the applicant provide their entire application, plans, descriptions, etc., to the adjoining and adjacent neighbors to their project. That doesn't happen here. The adjacent landowners get 2 lines at best and a certified letter. And if there's changes and modifications made to that application, the landowners don't necessarily see that as well. So you may have received and seen today the petition that has been sent out to the council and will be discussed tomorrow at the P&Z. I think what's happening, and it's happening with a lot of these short-term rentals, is that adjacent landowners are feeling disenfranchised, that their voices aren't being heard. I think there are ways to overcome that, either through, as I say, changing the burden to the applicant, as well as having planning provide sessions with the applicant and adjacent owners to discuss what their plans are and what their hope is as a new neighbor to people that, in our particular project, have lived on their properties for over 100 years. I thank you for your service. Again, it's just information for you. We are concerned, and I hope that sometime in the future, the planning process could be looked at and some of the actual designations like neighborhood commercial be tightened up because far too many categories of usage fall under that category. And applicants are finding ways to kind of weave their way around to get their end result, which may not be what adjacent landowners thought it was going to be.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Matthew. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else for the forum?
Yes, Sandy, I don't know if you want to talk. Okay, Sandy's down, so the last on the list today is going to be Scott Parker.
Greetings. I just wanted to make a few comments regarding the casita issue. I understand that's on tonight's agenda.
Yeah,
Do you want to speak to the item specifically?
we do have public comment that we will be getting to at that item, Mr.
Okay,
Parker. If
so I
you'd
can
like
wait
to
for
do
that.
it at that time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then we would have everybody's comments
fine.
at the same time.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
That's it for tonight, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The next item is our consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village council and will not be enacted by, and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All right, then I'm going to take this by a roll call vote. I'm going to approve the minutes. So Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Knight. Aye. Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes have been approved. All right, we're now going to move into old business. The first item on the agenda is consideration, action, and approval of findings, facts, and conclusions of the appeal hearing for SDP 2102 Dendro Technologies. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All right, again, I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote, but I'll start at the other end for variety. Councilor Parker?
Yes.
Councilor Lucero?
Yes.
Councilor Knight? Aye. Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Thank you. The second item is consideration, action, and approval of findings, facts, and conclusions of the appeal hearing for a denied building permit at 300 Mountain Shadows Road. Do I have a motion? Approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. I'm going to take a vote on this one. Any discussion? Should ask. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take the vote. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight. Aye. Councilor Parker.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is consideration, action, and approval of ordinance 21-04, an ordinance amending definitions in chapter 18, sections 18-29 and 18-203. This amendment of an ordinance does require a public hearing, but because it is legislative in nature, there's no need for witnesses to be sworn in, but we will have extensive public comment, I believe, but to introduce this, and I will also be, for this process, depending on how it goes, I may be asking the village attorney to help guide us through so we make sure that we come out at the end with an understandable product. But I'm going to ask Lori Stout, the head of planning and zoning, to come on up here and introduce the item.
This on the midget setting, if possible. There we go. Madam Mayor, Council, I don't want anyone's eyes to glaze over, so I'm going to be brief, truly. I would like to say that the ordinance revisions as originally presented to you are not a policy change. It will allow one house on a lot. The whereases, the many whereases, state village policy, and also some of the problems that I was attempting to solve. Now, having said that, I do have a version here with the red changes that I believe were given to us by Councilor Parker. And I also have a version with blue text that I believe our council wrote, if I'm correct. So having said that, working backwards, the proposed change to kitchen was discussed and an amendment was put forth by Councilor Murray at the last meeting, which the building official and I believe we can work with this. This is the definition of kitchen. Then we go to dwelling unit. Again, I'm working backwards on the pages here. The two proposed revisions to dwelling unit we also believe will work. I do respectfully request that we add in 3 words that are in our current language. So it would say a single unit with connected rooms. And the reason I request that that be added back in, that's word verbiage from our current definition, and it differentiates between a true residential addition or a duplex, triplex, etc. True residential addition will have connected rooms. So someone will be allowed to add on to their house, and that's truly what they'll be doing, as opposed to trying to sneak in an apartment. So dwelling unit, kitchen as revised, we believe in my department we can work with that, and we would request that with connected rooms be added to the definition of dwelling unit.
Can I ask, may I clarify, would that be a single unit, comma, where do you want those words in?
Single unit with connected rooms.
And then intended.
Correct. Thank you. Now moving to the changes to accessory building or structure. So by their very nature, these are separate structures. They will be, and as they are now. Unfortunately, as rewritten, they will turn into dwelling units as they do now. My concern is this: the changes are actually more lenient than what we have now. Nowhere in code now do we allow secondary dwelling units or casitas, whatever you'd like to call them. But this explicitly does allow that. Bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens, garages will all now be allowed with the change as amended. I feel this leaves the door wide open and doesn't fix the problem we were trying to fix, which was 2 or more houses appearing on a lot, occupied by long-term tenants about 85% of the time. We allow 1 dwelling unit per lot by our comprehensive plan and our code. It does take a tremendous amount of resources to try and fix this at the back end. So to conclude my remarks, I respectfully request that the council accept the amendment definition for dwelling unit with the 3 words I proposed, and kitchen is fine as is, but keep the original language for accessory structure, which clearly differentiates between a house and a true accessory structure, which is everything else, just not a house. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to ask the counselors if they have questions for Ms. Stout. Counselor Knight?
Yeah, so you didn't like the addition of the dwelling unit shall be limited to 30% of the total square footage of the dwelling unit, that kind of limits the size if it's
Well,
30%.
what the
That could
problem,
be good.
Counselor, what the problem was is it crosses out the language, it may have a half bathroom, but no shower or tub, and make not contain bedrooms or a kitchen. So it's allowing all of those things. So it's allowing a second house. It can only be 30% of the size of the main house. And my contention has always been, we don't allow second houses currently in code.
Councilor
Pardon me,
Lucero.
Mayor, just a point of order here. Are we discussing the amendment? Are we discussing the ordinance that you're putting forward, or are we discussing the floor amendment that was proposed to us? What are we discussing both right now?
We can, I think at this point, I believe maybe what we've kind of probably drifted, but what we were, I think, saying is that I think in looking at the original, the Director of Planning and Zoning has no objection to the definition of kitchen and really no objection to the definition of dwelling. Councilor.
Madam Mayor, Ms. Stout, and councilors, we're speaking of both, I think, is the answer to the question, Mayor Pro Tem. There was the original proposal that Lori had written. Then we chose to circulate the proposed changes that were drafted by Councilor Parker as proposed amendments. They haven't been accepted yet. They're just for discussion. So Lori's giving her comments on what she thinks of those proposals at this point. So that's where we're at. They haven't been introduced yet. That would only come later, but they're just being discussed.
Will they be discussed after they're introduced, or should that discussion happen now?
It started now. You can continue now, or you can wait and ask for comments only on the original language if you wish. It's up to the mayor really which direction to go in. Lori was commenting upon the proposed changes since they were circulated.
Thank you.
If it's going to make, what I really want to make sure happens here is that the conversation is clear and clean. So I'm going to suggest that because we do have a couple of floor amendments, and I think maybe at this point, let's go back to questions that are directed toward the original one that we have. I think we've probably pretty much all decided that the kitchen definition, which was raised by Councilor Murray last time, is it, and I think also Councilor Parker is probably not of much drama. But let's talk about questions that the council has as to other positions. Councilor Murray.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Yes, my one concern about the word, the use of the word lot, because there are some properties around here where the property itself is multiple lots. So it seems to me that if you say located on the same lot, what would prevent somebody from building a casita on an adjacent lot they might own, but within the same property lines? So my suggestion would be to replace the lot with the word property. So it's all encompassing. And that way, if there are multiple lots on the property, then we include everything. Because I'm a little concerned about the word lot being on the same lot, because if they own more than one, it might circumvent that.
Understood. I think that's.
Well, let me just clarify. Lot is a defined term. It is the legal creation of a deeded piece of land. So you could have separate dwelling units on separate lots. So a lot happens with subdivision, so in order to get more than one lot, you would have a subdivision occur. And then you have two lots, which could, if they meet our size requirements, could each have a dwelling unit.
Well, my concern, Mr. Audio, is that let's take the Haslam property, for instance, because it was basically 3 lots on that 12 acres. And so consequently, I'm worried about if we say we're just going to restrict the CETAs to the original lot where the house is at, what would prevent somebody from, if the adjacent lots that they own are big enough, from putting a casita on then?
We can't legally stop that if they are actually separate lots.
Right,
If they're under one ownership, but they're multiple lots,
right.
that they're just using all for the same agricultural purpose, for example, if they're legally separate lots, we can't prevent them from,
But if we say property, we're encompassing.
but we can't do that. They have, the lots are a legally defined deeded piece of property.
And Counselor, in that case, if they had a house on one lot
Yep.
and then they put a casita on the other lot, guess what? That's the house on that lot. Whatever you want to call it, it's a house on a lot at that
I don't
point.
know, it seems like it might be a circumvention, though, a way of circumventing that law, the definition.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councilor Wolfman?
Yes, the amendment strikes out the half bathroom. We had a long discussion about this. Councilor Burkett raised this as and we've had some mail on this regarding a pool and a pool house, man cave, studio that could have a half bath. And I think that's appropriate. And I'd like to see that left back in.
So I think some of the concern was not allowing a full bath for the pool house. And like I had said before, there will be a conditional use permit. So there are certainly legitimate reasons for someone, and a pool house is one of them. I want to have a shower. They go before Planning and Zoning Commission, they request it, they're under oath, and they're stating, this is for a pool house. This is not a house, and I'd like to have a full bathroom, and that would be an easy approval. There may be, other instances where a full bathroom be appropriate. And again, there's going to be a way, it's similar to the variance process. You go before P&Z and say, here's what I want to do, slightly variant to the ordinance, but a good reason, and that would be the process.
Go ahead. Yes, Councilor Wolfman?
Second question I have regards to 30%. 2,000 square foot house, a separate dwelling would amount to 600 square feet. A 6,000 square foot house would amount to 1,800 square foot.
We have a 9,600 square foot home right now being built. So I think the size to me was sort of irrelevant because we don't allow second dwellings on a lot. That was the problem with me. You can have a house here in Corrales, and then you can have any number of other things, barns, RV garages, studios, pool houses, whatever. But you just don't get two houses here unless we change our policy, which we haven't done yet.
Which I'm going to suggest, I think, is more appropriate for a comprehensive plan review. So, I'm going to just ask
Okay,
if
go
there's
ahead, go
any
ahead.
other counselors who have, Counselor Parker.
Mayor Roque, counselors, the motivation, and do I need to use the mic or can you guys hear me? The motivation behind everything that I put into this document, it was originally sparked by Councilor Murray's inclusion of a definition from the International Residential Building Code document. And I really feel strongly that there needs to be a level of consistency with what we're doing in this village with the other enforceable building codes that everyone needs to follow. And I mean follow, it's against the law not to follow them. There's been some comments about the language written for this accessory structure that it would allow a dwelling unit limited to 30%. That's completely untrue. That it says specifically an accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second independent dwelling unit. That 30% limitation would be put on a structure that is used as an ancillary building to the dwelling unit, meaning in support of it or subordinate to it. So in no instance does this accessory unit structures definition say a second dwelling unit is allowed on the property itself. Another issue that I'm having with a lot of this stuff, and I voiced my concerns last time, is that there are a lot of reasonable uses for people's property that are not going to be allowed unless they go through and apply for special use permits. And I do not think it's right for the council or the governing body to create these extra burdens for people to use reasonable or to pursue reasonable uses of their property. I'm completely aware of of the people who are using the casitas on their property and the damage that it is doing to the water table on there, and circumventing the zoning ordinances by putting things in after the fact. Saying that no bathroom would be allowed in the building is no different than saying no kitchen would be allowed, because it's a very frequent strategy used in construction where you put in all the plumbing systems for a future bathroom. And if you just leave say the toilet stub out a couple inches below the concrete's nice enough to crack exactly where you need to pop it out to put your toilet or to put your shower or whatnot. So you're not creating any other situation that can't be circumvented the way people are doing it with the kitchen stuff. What I see the issue is that it's not necessarily how our zoning ordinances are written, but it's how our zoning ordinances are enforced. And when speaking with the local magistrate here, it's and I'm not going to speak verbatim on there, but it's my understanding that in the last 3 years, there has not been a single case brought before her for her to make a judgment on. And should the zoning enforcement pursue an avenue, people who are in violation of this code can be fined $500 a day. And so if we're going to be serious about this, let the people have the reasonable uses of their property continue, and the people that are breaking the law, we can go after them. I mean, it is a very severe fine for people to violate these zoning ordinances and continue to be fined per day until it's resolved on there. If that happens once or twice, chances are people aren't going to do it anymore, because that's power, that's money in people's pocketbooks, really gets the message home. And then the secondary unit, they can spend up to 179 days in jail. I mean, this is serious stuff here. And I strongly believe that the people who are not breaking the law should not have this extra burden put upon them for these reasonable uses of their property. And so that's where I went through and put these items in here. And just so everyone's aware of it, what I did is took definitions directly from the International Residential Code and inserted them in here. We have a dwelling unit definition that covers both a dwelling and a dwelling unit, which is combined, and I think that's totally fine on there. But the accessory structure on there, I think it's, as long as it's subordinate to the dwelling use on the property, that's fine. As soon as you convert it into a secondary dwelling unit, then there's the issue. So that's kind of my peace of mind. And as you can tell, I kind of got heated about that, but I feel strongly about this. So anyway, thank you for your time.
I would like you to respond to one thing, because I looked up living space and I got the definition on the ICC. And in fact, it does list all of the things for a dwelling unit. So I actually went and looked that up, and that's when I decided that actually it was contradictory in my mind, that we do have a sentence that says it shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit, but the sentence before that talks about ancillary living space. And when I looked up living space, that gave the entire definition that is in here, living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. And so I thought we were sort of putting the fox in the hen house. In other words, it was two different things. And that was what my concern, frankly, was with this. And I agree, actually, that to the extent we can use International Building Code definitions, if they apply, I've been told by our council, and I think Lori's explained this, sometimes they don't fit, but if they do, that is a good thing to put in here, because then we're not asking a developer or a homeowner to try to learn something new. We're using a standard definition. So I agree with those points, and I think that's one of the reasons that, and I think that Ms. Stout has also decided that, yeah, when we talk about dwelling units or kitchens, those definitions are good and probably would be looked upon favorably perhaps by the council. But putting an ancillary living space in maybe causes us to look at something differently than just sticking with and again, if we want to say, community, do you want to have a second living unit on a lot, then that's a different conversation that I think we have to have with the whole community when we look at our comprehensive plan, which I believe we intend to do in the next cycle coming up. So that's where I fall on it, and that's why we did not mean to change policy with this process. We meant to, as it says here, clarify the definitions of accessory structures, accessory use, kitchen and dwelling unit. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. To the mayor's point, and Councilor Parker, if I could play devil's advocate here a little bit. So to the point that was just made, so your suggestion is accessory buildings intended for use as ancillary living space. And then says an accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit. Well, in the real world, they will. So I guess my question is, who can live in there and for how long? How do we legally uphold the language you have, an accessory structure or building shall not be used as a second or independent living unit? I feel like there's no way we can enforce that. Do we ask the people living there to provide us with ID? Do we, all they have to do is tell us they're family members, and then we say, okay, and back away? I'm just telling you from my heart, they're going to become second houses because that's what they do now. And then we have to try and find a way to enforce it after it's already there and being used that way. And it's already impossible. And it won't, this won't fix the problem.
No,
Yes, Councilor Lucero. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Parker.
But I do want to talk.
Yeah.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I totally understand what you're saying. And like I said, I still think it's a zoning enforcement issue. Like, how do we take care of this? But I think if someone has a house on a lot and they want to build a guest suite so that people can come and stay with them for the holidays or something, or they have a teenage daughter that's a little too mouthy for them, I'm not speaking from experience, of course, that they can go out and live in live in that space, but still it is just where they are sleeping and bathing, and that's the extent of it on there. Or if people want to have a gym on the back of their property and they want to have a shower in the gym, I just don't think that these other things that are not being an independent dwelling unit should have to come and A, pay for the special use permit, B, come and stand before the committees to see if the people who, not now, but in the future, are going to be making the decisions will have the same opinion as you, because we all know people's opinions change. And so I don't think that we can rightly say, like, well, we think that everyone in this room would agree to it now, but in 15 years, chances are everyone in this room is not going to be making the decisions. And so how do we make it so people can use their property in a reasonable manner that is not in violation of having a second dwelling unit on the property? And so I just think there's a way to do it. And Mayor Roque, thank you for catching that. The ancillary living space definition, I apologize that I missed that on there. And so maybe it's just, we take away everything that I put in there, and I would say, take out the bathrooms as well. And I would be okay with that definition on there, or maybe even leaving the last sentence that an accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit, because that's clear as mud, in my opinion, too.
There is a third, just to confuse this more, there was a second proposed floor amendment. Did Randy, am I the only person that you sent that over to?
Yeah, I had not sent that out because I didn't have a sponsor for it, but I was looking at the language after we had our discussions about some of our concerns that you were raising and that Lori was raising to Councilor Parker's suggested amendments, just as there's perhaps some middle ground, but it isn't something I don't think we should discuss
Okay.
at this point, because it'll just confuse the matter even more. If we get to a point where we're compromising on language, then I'll share anything that's relevant.
All right. But I think, yes, thank you. I think this is productive. We're kind of getting somewhere. But at this point, yes, Councilor
Mayor,
Cerro.
just if I could just comment, since we're giving out comments on the amendment and everything before us. Although I appreciate the passion Mr. Councilor Parker gives to this, I gotta agree with P&Z Administrator Stout that I don't know if this amendment would fix our problem. I think the issues that this amendment is addressing would be more suited for a comprehensive plan change or a policy change, which this ordinance, this chapter 18 update is not necessarily the place to do that. I think it requires a lot more discussion, a community coming together and deciding what we want this to look like. I'm just having a little bit of problem supporting the amendment itself, just for those very issues, because like P&Z administrator mentioned, that unfortunately, this is what we face. The enforcement is what we face as far as, keeping casitas or accessory dwellings turning into casitas. That is an issue, and that is a problem, and we have to address that. And I believe that the way the changes to the ordinance were before does that in the arena that we have to work with right now, as far as our rules go. And I'll say again, I believe the amendment would be a change basically to our comprehensive plan, along with our policies that have been in place for nearly 50 years now, and they work. They just needed some updates. They needed some tweaking, and I think we accomplished that in the ordinance change the way it is.
Thank you, Councilor DeCero. I think what I'd like to suggest now is that we go to public comment, and then we can come back and revisit this and the amendments. So who do we have for public? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the first on the list to speak to this item is Ryan Burt.
And we always give everybody 3 minutes, so you'll hear a beeper, but 3 minutes is actually longer than you think.
No problem. No problem, Mayor and councilors. Thank you very much. My name is Ryan Burt. I live at 121 Autumn Lane here in Corrales. I've been outed. I'm the pool house man cave workshop guy who sent the email. Thank you very much for reading that, by the way. It seems that people have seen that, so I won't dwell on that, but I'd just like to reiterate my main point, and that's that it seems like this is a use issue, right? It's not really geared towards the property itself. It's how are you using it? I gave the example of what my wife and I would like to do. We have no intention of ever even spending the night in that. And in fact, it would just be one room with an unfinished cement floor workshop on the back side of it. I suppose you could fall asleep on the couch in front of the TV, but there's no intention whatsoever to use it as that. And so this really seems to me as a use and enforcement issue. And I would encourage the council to focus on that, rather than focus on the building itself and what's going to be on there, obviously with the applicable codes and those types of things. The other thing that I'd like to speak to is I saw in the new proposed amendment that there was a 30% size property restriction. And I'd really question why that's in there. That doesn't seem to me to be relevant. I'll give you a glimpse. In my prior life, I lived in a suburb of Minneapolis in Minnesota, and I served for 10 years on the Board of Zoning Appeals and the chair of it a couple of times. And we ran into problems with McMansions, gigantic houses on small lots and very little space between houses, and having to worry about fire access to the backyard and all that kind of thing. But the way that was addressed to try and keep overbuilding on the lots was the concept of green space. And so depending on the size of the lot, there was required to be a proportion of contiguous green space somewhere on that lot to make sure that it wasn't built up. So if the purpose of that 30% restriction is really to preserve the flavor of Corrales and the green space and all of the beautiful things that we enjoy, I would encourage the council to take a look at a solution like that, because as I said, I feel that the 30% restriction is a little bit arbitrary. It doesn't take into account necessarily the size of the lot. It doesn't take into account the percentage of the lot that's already occupied by buildings or asphalt or driveway, that types of thing. So I would encourage that if the intent of it is really to try and preserve green space, that there are other ways that other municipalities have addressed this that are quite effective, that don't really rely upon just a carte blanche restriction on size. So I would encourage the council to look at that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address. And again, I would just encourage the council to focus on the use, not otherwise restricting what may be done on the property that would not run afoul of any of the good intentions of what the council is trying to do here. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Burt.
Next on the list is going to be Scott Parker.
Back again.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So we live at 341 Cielo Azul. And when we bought the house, it's a older adobe. It's oddly laid out, but it's interesting and it's small. So our original intent was to build a casita. And then of course, we ran into this. So I'm going to just ramble a little bit. The house that Lori mentioned, how big was that? Was that 6,000 or 9,000 square feet?
9,200.
9,800.
9,200.
9,200. So the point I would make about that is what's the impact of a 9,200 square foot house on groundwater when we're talking about if my house is 3,000 square feet and there's two of us living in it and we built a casita with say 2 bedrooms, right? We'd have a 5-bedroom total on the property, one of which the casita would not be occupied full time. If things are great, it might be occupied 80%. You have a 9,000 square foot home. How do you address a party on that? Because a 9,000 square foot home is going to have a 9,000 square foot party. It's going to have 9,000 square feet of people. So we have, if I think about all the undeveloped lots in Corrales and think to the future that one day, theoretically, every lot could be built, whether it's an acre or 2 acre, legally you could build a house on it. And if we're going to allow a house of, 6,000, 7,000 square feet on these lots, but yet we're restricting, just blindly restricting building a casita on a house with no connection to the square footage or the demand placed on groundwater, right? Or the pressure placed on groundwater. It seems to me that it's a management issue. Like we're failing to really manage the problem, right? So have we thought about, because this appears to me now, and I understand that this is a regulation, change in regulations versus a master plan, and possibly casitas could be considered in the master plan. But it seems to me to be, there's an opportunity in casitas if they're managed properly. There's a revenue. I'm a business person, so I'm always thinking about revenue. There's an opportunity for revenue. I'm sure more tax revenue would be a good thing. And then as I hear the comments, and I've heard this, we've only been here since September, although I went to school at UNM and lived here a long time ago for a year. I keep hearing the comment about, that this is what always happens. Someone builds a casita, they shouldn't put a kitchen in, and then they do. And I've heard this repeatedly in crowds about a lot of things like, oh, they do that. And, what can we do? And I don't understand that. I mean, the government should be in control of the things that it's trying to control legally. So inspections can be a source of revenue. So if you shouldn't put a kitchen in it, have an annual inspection, make sure that inspection covers the cost of the inspector, plus put some money back into the kitty so that inspections are a profit center. So, they become a positive thing. They're controlling what we want to control, and we're also generating revenue. So I see my time is up. So, had a lot more, but thank you very much.
No, I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
And finally, we have John Clark.
Well, first of all, I appreciate your service there. In the old days, Larry Veal and I were good buddies. He was a customer. We built water treatment plants and sewer plants all over the West. And I think that we've got too much regulation here going on that you cannot enforce. They'll find somebody that can go around it. I rather think that rather than trying to control the structure or how much land you're using up or how much water you're putting on the land, I don't think you can control that. You can control the use of the property. You control how many horses you got, this type of thing. You're out of line. You sound like the Democratic Party in the nation's capital.
Thank you.
There's nothing that they won't try to regulate. This is absolute asininity. Why respect? I live at 591 East Ella. I'm the last guy on the river. I've got 2 acres down there. I've got a barn that I built 45 feet of garage, a motorhome garage, a 2-car garage, and a garage for my tractor, and another little office building, and a 2-bedroom casita with all of the things that you guys would like to outlaw. How in the world, if I take all of that out, what would keep somebody, by the way, nobody's going to live there. I've had ample opportunity to rent it. I don't want them on the property. It's for my 5 kids when they come home. Or if one of the kids takes over my house, I'd like to live out there. I've got about 800 square feet, 2 bedrooms, and all the rest of the stuff. I'm 93 years old. I either have to leave or I'm gonna occupy it. So
You're a lucky man, Mr. Clark.
Pardon?
You're a lucky man.
How do you figure luck? Look, we don't need all this regulation for crying out sideways. I think that you can control this by the use of the land a lot easier than you can control all the other stuff that's there. And how do you protect the stuff that's already there? Do you put that, that's exempt now? And by the way, but being I've built so many wastewater treatment plants, I'm kind of worried about it. I did not build another leach field for the 2nd acre. I simply built a holding tank, just like the restaurants do up here, and we pump it out. We're concerned about the land use, have been for 100 years, okay? Why don't you back off of this and relook at it? I think that you've got a lot of things that you cannot enforce. Somebody will find a way around, and that's going to end up paying a lot of attorneys.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Is that it? Thank you very much. No,
but one question.
no, we're not engaging.
No, I
Discussion.
wanted to talk
Oh,
to
do we?
Lori.
Oh, Lori, can you come back up, Counselor? But I think I need to close the public hearing at this time. Come on up, Lori. I'm just going to make sure that we're doing this right. The public hearing is now closed. Can we take the question? Okay, go ahead.
Just one quick question. The 9,300 square foot house, is that on 2 acres? It has to be.
No, it's on an acre. It only has 4 bedrooms. It has a very nice media room and some other goodies.
Doesn't it have to be only a percentage of the whole acre?
We have 35% lot coverage. So an acre is approximately 43,000 square feet. So you can have, my math is shaky, but I want to say about 16,000 square feet of stuff on an acre by our current ordinance.
We also have 2
Wow.
lots. Yeah, and if you have 2 acres,
Yeah.
30,000.
All right. Anybody else have a question while Ms. Stout is up here? All right, I think at this point, did I miss somebody? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Parker?
Yeah, Mayor Rowe, councilors, Ms. Stout, I don't know if it's appropriate to say it on here, but if there's a way that I could amend my proposed amendment to the accessory uses and just take out, the only addition would be that an accessory building structure may not be used as a 2nd dwelling unit, but take out the portion about the bathrooms on there. I don't know if that's possible.
I
to
think
do.
what we can do, I think there is a way to get there. I think we need a motion and a second on the original. And then when we get to that, then we could entertain an amendment to that at that point. Does that make sense? But we first need to deal with the item that was before us originally presented. So I need a motion on that.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, would it make sense to make this as, since there's 3 different definition changes on here, that it'd be 3 different motions?
It would be.
And we could start with the easy ones
Thank you,
first.
sir. That would be an excellent way to go here so that we don't get confused.
All right.
All right, so do you want to start with the motion?
Sure, Mayor Rowe, councilors, let me make a motion that we accept Councilor Murray's change to the kitchen definition.
Point of order.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Councilor Parker, we first have to get the item itself on the floor
sorry.
by motion and second. And then once the item's on the floor, then we can start playing with it.
Okay, so would you like to?
Now, Mayor, I would move that we approve ordinance 2104.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All right, now we're up for discussion. Can we now move back to Councilor Parker? Go for it.
Yeah, Mayor Rowe, councilors, I move that we amend the definition of kitchen as indicated by Councilor Murray to read only as a means, or kitchen means any room used, intended, or designed to be used for cooking or the preparation of food.
All right, I have that amendment. I need a second on that. All right, I have a second from Councilor Knight. We always work backwards by doing the amendments first, so I'm going to take a voice vote on that. Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Knight? Aye. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
All right, that has been amended. All right, now I think at this point, we can go ahead and take the second amendment. Not that second amendment, but if you would like to offer a second amendment regarding maybe the dwelling unit, is that where we are?
Right, Mayor Rowe, councilors, I propose this with the understanding that Lori's in approval of the way the dwelling unit is written in this amendment. Is that?
Correct. I just had those 3 words I was hoping to sneak in there with connected rooms.
Can I add them to what I'm about to say right now? Okay.
Yes.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I move that we amend the definition of a dwelling unit. And please, if I screw this up, everyone say stop and I'll rewind myself. The dwelling unit, a single unit with connected rooms intended or designed to be built, used, rented, leased, let, or hired out to be occupied, providing complete independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for each and every one of the following uses: living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. A dwelling unit may be a mobile home, modular home, manufactured home, or site-built house. It may also be an independent unit of an apartment, townhouse, or other such multi-unit residential structure where allowed by the zoning code. Recreational vehicles, travel trailers, or converted buses, whether on wheels or a permanent foundation, cannot be a dwelling unit, whether or not on wheels or a permanent foundation. Did I read that right?
Thank you. So okay, I was so blown away by that definition that I've lost my spot. So we now, what spot are we at? Are we ready to take a vote?
Oh, well, have you seconded?
Did we get a second?
Just to make sure I'm clear on what we're taking a vote on. We're taking a vote, are we taking a vote on the amendments right now?
We're taking a vote actually on going ahead and I think we're going to be amending, if we're accepting the amendments, then when we get back to the original, it will be with these amendments. So in other words, the definition of kitchen will now, when we get back to the original item, the kitchen will be as proposed by Councilor Murray and Councilor Parker. When we get back to the original, the definition of dwelling unit will be as just described, and it will take the place of what is in the original item that's before us.
So it's really just a definition.
Right.
Including the 30%.
No. It's only what Councilor Parker just stated out loud. Would you like the clerk to go ahead and reread it?
Would you please?
So my understanding, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me. We're talking about the definition of a dwelling unit at this point. We have a motion. We do not have a second yet, but the definition, as Councilor Parker has proposed, would read a single unit intended or designed to be
No.
With connected
Oh,
rooms.
I'm sorry. A single unit
With connected
connected rooms or designed to be built, used, rented, leased, let, or hired out to be occupied, providing complete independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for each and every one of the following uses: living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. A dwelling unit may be a mobile home, modular home, manufactured home, or site-built house. It may also be an independent unit of an apartment, townhouse, or other such multiple unit residential structure where allowed by the zoning code. Recreational vehicles, travel trailers, or converted buses, whether on wheels or a permanent foundation, cannot be a dwelling unit, whether or not on wheels or a permanent foundation.
It sounds like that last part of that sentence can come out because it's the wheels or permanent foundation is in there twice, is it not?
Whether on wheels or a
Yeah,
permanent foundation.
you're right.
Yeah.
It might be a dwelling unit,
The last-
period. Right after unit, it should be a period, and then whether or not on wheels or permanent foundation.
Okay, so we can omit this. So it would end,
Unit.
yes,
Yeah,
permanent
unit.
foundation cannot be a dwelling unit. All right? Everybody clear? So do I have a second for that?
Second.
All right, I have several. So thank you very much. I'm going to take a vote
Wait, just a
on,
minute. Can we have some discussion on that? If you would, please.
of course.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've gone from our current code, which has a very simple one-sentence structure. The proposed changes kind of expanded on that, and now we've got this convoluted amendment coming before us. Now, I'm a little concerned that I understand where Councilor Parker came from because he took dwelling and dwelling unit out of the IBC code and mashed them together and created this piece of language before us tonight. I'm just concerned that just the convolution of this is just too complicated. I would rather stick, if we're going to go with something, let's stick with what Ms. Stout proposed. And let's keep it a little bit more simpler, because I think if the more complicated we get it, it gives more opportunity for somebody to circumvent.
Do you have a response, Lori, to that?
I don't have my original language up here, but the thing that I had added to what we had was you can't live in an RV, et cetera, et cetera. And that was at the request of our code enforcement officer, who now has to kind of take a roundabout way to, you know, keeping people from living in a bus or whatever. So that's all I added, I believe, to our original, but I don't have it in front of me, but.
Like it?
Yeah, we
Sure.
can probably get it for you.
Here, I think I've got, I think that'll probably have it. I mean, he's highlighted that various part of it.
Would someone else like to add to that discussion as to whether or not they feel that it's,
I think I'm agreeing with Councilor, I'm sorry, Councilwoman. I agree with Councilor Murray. I think we need to separate the two issues, either go with what the administration and Lori has put out, and then we'll address the amendment we'll address this amendment as a whole nother section. I think we just need to streamline this process instead of just taking it piecemeal.
well, actually what this is this was 3 different definitions.
Yeah.
So this is the definition. It's always going to be a definition of dwelling unit. It's just that Councilor Parker has asked that it be amended to coincide with, I don't mean to speak for you, the ICC and the IRC. And that's just a slight change in the definition that sort of lays out the uses that are normally considered to be part of a dwelling unit. And then at the end, it does give the idea, and I think Lori's got that in there too, maybe just not quite the same spot about not being able to live in an RV. Okay. So these are 3 different sections, and they are 3 different definitions.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I don't know if this will help or not, but when I read what Councilor Parker proposed, I thought it tightened up our language and made it a little more clear, although there's more words. The part that I liked was the original definition just talked about habitation by one family for living and sleeping purposes. This one included that list of all purposes of a dwelling unit: living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. And I kind of liked the clarity of that, because it really wraps everything into what constitutes a dwelling unit. So that's my 2 cents from a lawyer's perspective. Yes, it is more wordy, but some of the words helped clarify.
All right, does anyone else have, Councilor Waldman, do you have any
I do have one question.
You certainly don't need to, but.
No, I do have one question, and it raises, maybe out of line, and may raise a totally different issue. I'm concerned about the term rented in here. You know, we have there are signs all over about short-term rentals. How is this?
That I just didn't hear you.
Sorry?
Could you just repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the word rented. There's no, it doesn't say long-term rental, and it could be interpreted in any number of ways.
Mayor, Councilor, that word rented was introduced by Councilor Parker. So if you wanted to say long-term rented versus short-term, that's, you know, at your discretion.
I think we are trying to segregate these issues a little bit between any ideas about short-term rentals, and this is a use as called out by the IRC. I don't know whether we want to wordsmith it.
What if we did, may I make a suggestion? Sorry, I just kind of jumped in there. What if we just said a single unit with connecting rooms intended or designed to be built, and then just skip over to providing complete independent living facilities and take out the whole used, rented, leased, let, or hired out. Just take that out entirely. Built to be occupied, I guess. So taking out the words used, rented, leased, let, or hired out, and just start with to be occupied, comma. Would that work?
So you're suggesting, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilor Parker.
Mayor, councilors, Councilor Voldman, the reason the rented is in there is actually a protection for exactly, I think, of what you're concerned about, because if there is something on the property that is built to be rented out for those purposes, whether it's short-term or long-term, it will count as one dwelling unit. So it would prohibit another dwelling unit to be on the property. That's my understanding of how that reads, and Randy could.
Well, and I think that we don't have to follow the International Residential Code for buildings, but it's nice language, and then we can dovetail with the way it's interpreted across the country versus making up our own definitions. That's the advantage. It doesn't take away or add to any rights that someone will have under our code anyway. I mean, it is just, it's true. Any home, any dwelling unit can be rented out by any owner. And if they comply with our regulations, they can be a short-term rental. So, I mean, it doesn't add or detract from people's rights that they already have walking in the door anyway, in my view. And I just like the fact that we have something that is of a interpreted nationally and by many people. It is nice to have that clarification. If we start writing our own, then it can be interpreted different ways, and there's unintended consequences. That's all. So
I would suggest at this time that what we have before us, we have a motion and a second. And again, we're working on the amendments because we have to work backwards. I'm sorry?
There was no second.
Okay, do I have a second for this?
I thought there was both.
Yeah, I think I had two. I think we had threes, actually. So I just want to make sure we're clear that what we're doing now is we are voting on an amendment to see if it is the will of the council to accept this amendment to the original item. Don't have to, but that's what we're voting on right now. So I'm going to call for a vote. William Waldman,
Aye.
Stuart Murray,
No.
Kevin Lucero,
No.
Mel Knight. Aye. Tyson Parker.
Aye.
Where are we since we're a person down? Do we pass?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
3-2.
I think it was 4. Okay, all right. So now we have one last amendment, which will be placed before us. And I think that has to do with the definition of accessory structure. Is that correct? All right, so Councilor Parker, would you like to give us the potential amendment for the definition of accessory structure?
Mayor Roque, councilors, it seems like there was some angst about that portion of it with the definition that you specifically clarified that should not be in there. And I can understand why there was some confusion with that. So I'll be taking out that entire sentence with what I'm about to read on there.
Okay.
So I move that the definitions of accessory uses, I move that accessory uses and structures definition will be deleted, blah, blah, blah. Accessory building or structure means a building detached from and incidental and subordinate to the dwelling unit and located on the same lot, such as a detached garage, workshop, or studio, and then skip down to an accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit. So I just so everyone is clear, I took out the portion of the bathrooms in that motion I just made.
All right, do we have a second so that we could discuss this?
Second.
All right, I have 2 seconds. All right, discussion on this. Yes,
Mayor Rowe, councilors, just so it's clear why I did not have an issue with the bathrooms in there. When you were applying for a building permit for a residential lot, the number of bathrooms is not used to determine the amount of effluent that leaves the house. It is based upon the bedrooms of the house on there. And so that's where the rationale to take that out came from.
Yes, Ms. Stout.
I did want to say something. I did have a very long conversation with someone at NMED, Sam Speaker, and they are now also looking at kitchens. And so their definition of a living unit, if you will, is if it has that sink, if something has a bathroom in it, that does not designate it as a separate living unit. But if it has a kitchen with a sink, then they will consider that under their rules, a separate living unit. So I will just say I'm still a little concerned about having bedrooms and a kitchen in another structure because it will become a house. Maybe the bathroom was the sticking point, the full bathroom. So if it just said it cannot contain bedrooms and a kitchen, but we leave the bathroom in, would that perhaps work?
Mayor Rowe and councilors, I
Yes,
think the
please.
kitchen is the sticky point for me on there.
Oh.
So it's, I mean, if someone has an office and someone comes to stay with them and they sleep in it, I don't see how that could be any different. So
Would Councilor Parker please pick the mic up, please?
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, what I was saying is that the issue for me that's the deal breaker for the accessory structure is the kitchen in and of itself. Once the kitchen enters the situation, it becomes, and the key word here is an independent dwelling unit, meaning it's standalone. You do not need anything from the main dwelling unit on the property, and you no longer are ancillary or subordinate to it. If there's an office with a full bathroom, or if there's a bedroom with a full bathroom that is ancillary, meaning it's part of the dwelling unit use on the property, then in my mind, that matches with the intent of the code on there. And so taking the bathroom out, I don't think is necessary. And as I stated before, would increase the burden of the average person who just wants to build, an office with a bathroom out back. And so it's I don't want to use the word punitive, but I'll use the analogy that we have a lot of people that speed on Corrales Road, and the police do everything they can to enforce that on there, but they're not catching everyone. And so it seems like we're taking the approach of not letting anyone drive on Loma Larga because some people choose to speed and aren't getting caught. So
this, if I just want to clarify that your amendment, Councilor Parker, does not anticipate that there would be a kitchen in
Correct.
these units. Right. Because then that would become, and it can't be used as a second or independent dwelling unit.
Right.
Yes. Did you want to?
I just had a question. Lori, when you were talking to NMED, did they say that what they were talking about, is it something that's gone before the board at this point, or is it something that Sam's considering?
He said that what they consider a separate living unit now is if it has a kitchen and specifically a sink, because then they consider that a living unit. That was his language.
So, okay, so it's something that's gone before the,
Apparently, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Councilor Murray.
so if there was a separate building, but it had a bathroom, but no kitchen by our new definition, then we would be good.
I mean, I'm arguing no bedrooms or kitchen, but that's just me wishing.
Part of the problem I have with some of this is that regardless of good intentions of having these casitas or extra dwelling units, people are going to put them out there for rent as Airbnb or whatever they want to be. And consequently, we're changing the dynamics of the village because we're adding more people. Yes, we can have a 9,200 square foot house, McMansion. I agree. And I think Councilor Audio even suggested that maybe we should tighten up the 35% coverage on the lot. Because like you say, if you get 2 acres, you can have up to 30,000 square feet. Now, that being said, Also, when this was originally proposed, the 30% restriction, well, if I wanted a big barn bigger than my house, you know, that 30% would have impeded on somebody being able to put that out onto the structure. But I'm a little concerned about some of the worried here, but I just want to make sure that separate living unit by NMED is not a kitchen and a sink. Is that correct?
They
Reasonable.
consider a kitchen in an accessory building that has a sink, a separate living unit by their definition.
Yeah, I mean, a bathroom's got to have a sink. There's no way around.
Yeah, if they said if it was just a bathroom and a barn, they're not going to consider that a living unit. But once you bring the kitchen in, you're now saying we have a house in their view.
Let's get to the pool house where
Yeah.
they may want to shower along with the sink, you know, in a bathroom. You know.
Yeah, that's a bathroom. That's why I was saying maybe the full bathroom, if that's the hang up, that could be just in there, but no bedrooms or kitchen. And then that takes away the pool house concern and, you know, other folks wanting a full bathroom for whatever reason.
So,
Yes, Councilor
so is NMED then changing their, possibly changing their definition? At one point, it was a stove defined a kitchen. Now they're saying a sink defines a kitchen?
Correct. I've looked at the state law and I haven't really seen, you know, the ones that pertain to them. It seemed to me they were always looking at bedrooms. And so that's the discussion I had with them. You know, do you just look at bedrooms? And they said, no, we're now starting to look at these kitchens in accessory buildings and considering that a living unit, because clearly that's what happens is it becomes a living unit when there's a kitchen there. And he said specifically sink in the kitchen is kind of what triggers him.
Well, I know that this is aspirational for them. It hasn't actually been passed.
He said that's what they do now. That's what they look at.
Because we have always allowed accessory buildings, like detached garages or workshops or studios, and some of these definitely have sinks in them. And I think this would be a huge change to say that.
He did say kitchen with sink, so I wish he was here
Well,
to clarify.
I think our new, and again, we'll have to, I mean, this is not necessarily going to be the same thing for the next 25 years, but I think when we've adopted, for instance, Councilor Murray's definition of kitchen, it's very broad. It says, you know, preparation of food. So that should get us somewhere with that. I mean, you know, any law is going to have some problems, and we do want to allow people use their property, right? I mean, I know there's some who are very, I would say, optimistic about our staff's ability to enforce on all these, but we know it's difficult.
And Mayor, Councilor, if you kind of think this through in the real world situation, I was having this discussion with our building official. So let's say in the accessory structures, you allow the full bathroom, you do not allow the bedrooms, you do not allow the kitchens. What our building official was saying, if he sees a cabinet top where someone's going to maybe put in their microwave, that's fine. A small fridge, no problem. It's the separate room where you cook food. It's a kitchen. So some of this is, I guess, a little bit common sense, but he said he would look at, someone's going to have a microwave in their barn. They want to make their hot pockets when they're out there tending to the horses or whatever. That's fine. So there's some common sense here. We're just trying to prevent the second house and third house in some instance. That's all we're trying to do.
I think I'd just like to, Councilor Parker.
Yeah,
Sorry, okay, I'll get him.
Mayor, row councilors, and hopefully I'll stop talking. What the idea of not allowing the kitchens in the accessory structure to me would prohibit people who are doing their own food processing, canning, livestock stuff. They're going to need that type of situation in there. But it's like when you said, when they start combining everything, and that's where that last sentence, an accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit, regardless of what's in it. It shall not be used for that.
I can tell you that we did have an application before P&Z a couple of months ago, and a woman was doing just that. She wanted to, for her home occupation, make items from goat milk, and she has sort of a quasi kitchen in there, and that's okay. Her stated use is it's a milking barn, Plus she takes the milk and then she makes things out of it. So in that case, it was approved. She has stated her intended use there.
So it seems like that sentence of an accessory building shall not be used for a second or independent dwelling unit. I mean, it's crystal clear what it shall not be used for, regardless of what's in there.
Right. It does focus on use in that sense. Yes.
Mayor, could I get Councilor Parker to read his middle sentence again? That took out the ancillary language. I didn't get what his intent for that sentence was now.
Mayor Rowe, Councilor, Mr. Audio, would you repeat your question? What would you like me to read?
The second sentence.
When you're doing your second sentence that used to have your ancillary living quarter language, you struck that, but I didn't get what you left in that sentence. Or did you strike the whole sentence?
I struck everything. I struck out the bathroom. I struck everything else I wrote, but left in the very last sentence of an accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit.
Got you. Thank you. So the 30% went away.
Yes, gone. That caused a lot of issues for people.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could just throw a minor wrench into the proceedings here. We had a member of the public who didn't get the opportunity to sign up. I think it would be appropriate to allow them to speak.
Yes.
If it's okay with the governing.
I think we always want to have public comment, so please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm sorry, I apologize for not following the procedure. This is my first time coming to one of these. My name is Vanessa Santo. I have lived in this village my entire life. I've had the privilege of living here. My father is Cleophas Padilla. He's lived here for almost 45 years. My concern is specifically to the last sentence. An accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second or independent dwelling unit. My concern is as follows. I appreciate the acknowledgement of trying to give members of our village the opportunity to use our land in ways that are reasonable. To me, this is so limiting because I have elderly parents that are in need of care. And one of the reasons I love this village is because I live on enough property to have the opportunity to put a secondary living space for my parent to live in, to be able to have that care. So I'm so concerned about this specific limitation. I understand the concerns with the groundwater. I understand the concerns with the overpopulation and development. I mean, as a child, I had the hardest time every time a new house was built because it just felt like it was ruining my village, because I love the agricultural aspect of this village, but I also love the opportunity that we have to have the freedom to use our land in ways that are allowed to support our families in ways that can be helpful and needed at times. And so I would just appreciate consideration of how restrictive that truly is. I don't know that I could go before P&Z and say, I'd like to build a building. That I'm saying to you in plain language, yes, I'd like to put a bedroom in it and a bathroom, and I don't need the kitchen, but I would like a member of my family that is elderly to be able to have the opportunity for a place to stay. I understand that comes with all these other issues that you all are trying to address, but surely there has to be a way that we are still allowed the freedoms to use our properties in ways that support our families without restricting us so severely. I intentionally don't live in a community with an extreme HOA. I live in a village where next door to me, there's a rundown house with 6 old cars. And on the other side, there's a beautiful mansion. I'm in agreement with the idea that if the groundwater is what we're concerned with, then there needs to be some acknowledgement of the sizes of homes. And I guess my concern is, where do the restrictions stop? At what point do we limit our residents from being able to make choices within the properties that they've really invested heavily to live and enjoy? I really liked the idea of considering the green space, because if our hope is to keep this an agricultural village, that seems a very reasonable way to try to keep that green space and allow for that water usage. So thank you for listening. I'm sorry to throw a monkey wrench into your meeting.
No, you did not at all.
Thank you very much.
Lori, would you like to address this point? Because there actually is an answer and there is a
Certainly. Thank you,
policy.
Mayor, councilors. I'm totally sympathetic with that viewpoint. And I guess what I wrote does not disallow an elderly family member from living with you. It's just going to be a residential addition versus a separate house. What I wrote doesn't change our policy that we already have in place. That is a discussion that can take place when we have a comprehensive plan discussion at some point. But absolutely, someone can have a separate suite for their loved one that's just connected to their existing house. It's just not going to be a separate dwelling unit.
Thank you very much. All right, any further discussion? All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a vote. And remember, what we are now voting on is a proposed amendment to the definition of accessory structure. Do all the counselors feel they understand what the proposed amended definition is?
So we're not talking about the other definition, accessory use. We're just talking about the definition for accessory building or structure.
Correct. Do you want to read it again, or are we okay to go for a vote?
I'm happy to if any of the council needs.
Read it one more time.
Okay, so.
You're
again,
welcome.
Please stop me if I'm incorrect at any point, but the definition of accessory use and structures will read, an accessory building or structure means a building attached or detached from and incidental and subordinate to the dwelling unit and located on the same lot, such as a detached garage, workshop, or studio. Any accessory building or structure shall not be used as a second independent dwelling unit.
Or independent.
Or independent dwelling.
All right, I'm now going to take a vote on that proposed amendment.
Did we get a second? I don't remember.
I think we did, we got two.
Second.
You guys.
Twins, second.
All right. Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero.
Aye.
Counselor Knight. Aye. Counselor Parker.
Aye.
All right. So now we have those amended definitions. We will now be voting on the original item, which here we go. The remains of the original item. Thank you. So I believe we do have a motion and a second on that. Do we have?
As amended, right?
As amended, correct. Do we have discussion on the item as amended? All right, we can go ahead then, and I think we probably are able at this point then to go ahead and take a vote on the approval of ordinance 2104 as amended. And I'm going to now call for a voice vote. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Knight? Aye. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
All right, let's send up the balloons. Thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work that everybody has put into it. Thank you very much. We're now going to move into new business. The first item on new business is consideration, action, and approval of ordinance 2105. That's an ordinance authorizing the issuance of not more than $2,100,000 of general obligation bonds. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. I get my paper bag. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I stole Counselor Knight. So you can have
There you
everything
go.
else out.
There you
All
go.
right. Thank you. I'm good.
It's yours. This is mine.
God, you know, I have my paper bag. I cannot. All right.
Very good.
That's all right. I'm going to have our bond attorney, Jill Sweeney, speak to this item. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Jill Sweeney with Sherman and Howard, and I also have with me via speaker, I hope, Brad Anks from Stifel Nicholas, your financial advisor. So I'll give you a brief introduction and then turn it over to Brad
Brad, can you hear?
for final remarks.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
That's-
So you have before you this evening ordinance number 2021-05, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than 2,100,000 of general obligation bonds for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving streets, parks, and recreational facilities. And you'll remember we spoke about this several months ago when the council authorized the working group to approach the Finance Authority to issue the bonds for these particular purposes. These purposes having been approved by the voters in March of 20. And so this is the.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble hearing up here because people are speaking in the back of the room. It's probably my age, and I apologize, but if you could keep it down back there, I'd appreciate it. Go ahead.
So we're here with you tonight to report on that, the arrangements with the Finance Authority, which were made in accordance with the parameters set by the governing body. So the par amount of the loan should be purchased by the Finance Authority, and then the village will, as projects are complete, ready to go, requisition the money from the Finance Authority. The final amount of the loan will be $2,065,000. So the amount does not exceed the $2,100,000 authorized by this body. The final maturity will not exceed August 1, 2031. And in fact, that will be the final maturity of those bonds. The maximum interest rate on any maturity of any series of bonds shall not exceed 1.2% per annum. And in fact, there's a range of the maturities from 0.140 to 1.080. So all within a range, all below that 1.2%. Combined true interest cost of all series of the bond shall not exceed 0.7%, and in this instance is 0.55%. So very good sale that Brad, I'm sure, will comment on momentarily. So now the next steps as we move toward closing will be to get everything in order, make sure that all the closing documents are signed, that our arrangements with the Finance Authority are firm, and we'll move through the publication of the adoption of the ordinance and the statutory waiting period, and anticipate closing on July the 23rd, which means that will be the time and the date on which the village can begin to requisition funds and has funds available for those projects authorized by the voters and planned by the village. So with that, I can stand for any questions, but also turn it over to Brad for a few comments on the sale.
Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, thank you, Jill, and good evening, Mayor and council members. This is Brad Angst with Steeple. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Well, Jill did a great job there summarizing. It's been a really good time in the market to be able to lock in some very low cost options for your projects. And so we're pleased with the results. The NMFA has been providing some good options here for the communities in the state. They essentially act as a pass-through to the capital markets and to the bond markets. And so, as Jill mentioned, you have locked in a 10-year bond with the NMFA at a 0.55% borrowing cost. So, about half of 1%. So, very low cost of capital for you all to be able to get out there and do these improvements and perform the will of the voters that approved these projects here in recent years. So we're pleased with this. As Jill mentioned, we're moving towards, with your approval here tonight, we'll move towards the July 23rd closing date, at which time the escrow account will be funded and you can begin to draw on those funds. With that, I will pause and also answer any questions, should you have them.
Yes.
Jill, as someone not familiar with the bonds markets, can you explain the difference between the 2,065,000 and what the voters approved of 2.5 million?
Sure. So the voters authorized an amount that was estimated by the village. That's the authorization that the village has to issue bonds. But when we actually go to issue bonds, we have to size the bond appropriately, right? So we have to make sure that we have projects that will cover that particular amount. And so what we need and how it's sized for the project now is just a little bit less than that. So we still have, we may have authority in that category to make sure that we use our full authorization.
If I could just do a follow-up. We know there are supply chain issues. I was at a meeting a week and a half ago regarding the rec center and the new building that's going to be built.
Correct.
The estimate of that has gone up a couple $1 million. So what was passed in 2020, March of 2020, may not reflect the reality of today's construction costs. So it almost sounds like we're losing authority of about $500,000.
Mayor,
I'm
used to the Zoom too, obviously. Mayor, Member Waldman, we won't lose that authority. We can pick that authority up if we haven't hit it in our next issuance, but we can't exceed it.
Can I also say that I think, aren't we also sizing our bonds to keep our mill levy rate and our bonding capacity steady?
Yep.
That's another reason why we.
Lots of moving pieces.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, my understanding is this is kind of a combination of the two bond issues that were issued in March 2020. The $1.5 million for the village to do buy equipment and so forth, and then a portion of this is being used for the rec center. So we're probably not losing everything in the total bond issuance. We're just
It's
portioned.
So excuse me. Yes. Mayor, Councilor Murray, you're absolutely right. This is a combination of two questions. So, for example, if we were voters authorized $1 million for the rec center, at this time, the village determined that $500,000 was ready and that other $1 million will go into roads. And so it's not a one-to-one match. We're using this $2,065,000 for a particular group of authorized projects that span across two questions, as Councilor Murray points out. And so the authorized purposes for which this $2,065,000 can be spent includes streets, parks, and the rec complex.
But we will pick up every.
Right, we will pick it up. There will be another issuance that will allow us to keep that mill levy constant, and will come later in time and finish up the rest. And part of what we're doing is working very, very closely with the village to build a program that allows you to issue bonds on a regular basis, so that you can have funds available for projects, to prioritize projects, and to keep that mill levy constant. So you'll see bond issuances, and I'm generalizing here, bond issuances say every other year. So you have an election and you have an issuance, and you have an election and you have an issuance, to try to keep all of that steady, so that your capital improvement plan, allows you to better create a long-term capital improvement plan. Does that help you some, so that you have fun, and then you have debt coming on and you have debt going off on a regular basis?
One of
So
the reasons,
property tax, we don't have property tax shock up and down, up and down.
Sure.
We're trying to keep it level.
one of the reasons I ask is that I've been in some discussions about the rec center and trying to make up some of the money because of the supply chain issue, and talking with the USDA Rural Development. So if there's going to be a local match to access a loan from USDA, what dollar figure can we use, for that? So they're
Right.
going
I understand what you're saying. I'm happy to look into that. And I think not to put Administrator Curry on the spot, but I think this is all part of the discussion that he raised with the review of the money in the local government investment pool. And we were in a very unique situation right now because the village is looking at that LGIP money. We have money coming in from the American Recovery Act. We have bond proceeds. We have money that comes from the state in severance tax bond proceeds. It may be prudent to leverage USDA. There may be less expensive money, say from the Finance Authority at 0.5%. That's just amazing. And so I think I think your administrative team is working very carefully to take all of those pieces and figure out how best to put them together to reach the end goals of the village. And as the mayor said, not an easy task, but a good problem to have. And so all these things sort of, we're talking about them very separately, but they do all come together to provide a capital improvement program supported by bonds as well as other things for the village, of which by your survey and all the rec complex is a very important part.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's see. I believe we have do we have a motion and a second on this? No. Can I have a motion and a second on this?
So move, Mayor.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
All right, thank you. We're going to take a vote on this. Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Knight? Aye. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Jill. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, bye-bye. I tell you. All right, the second item is consideration, action, and approval of the amended Bosque management guidelines. And Joan has come here and she stuck it out the whole meeting. So
Here I am again.
thank you. I know we've seen these management guidelines previously.
Yes.
And I understand there's a couple of little changes.
Yes, there are. On behalf of the Bosque Advisory Commission, I came before you March 23rd via Zoom, and you approved the Bosque management guidelines. And since the village co-manages the Bosque with MRGCD, and they are the landowners, I sent it to them for their approval, and they made some changes. And they include, under the animal and plant life, under consider the introduction of canopy tree species, they added adapted to New Mexico's changing climate and hydrologic conditions. And also under animal and plant life, they wanted, we put maximize use of native plants, and they added adapted to site conditions that support wildlife. Also under the animal and plant life, they added limit vegetation management activities in the Bosque to outside of migratory bird season, which is April 15th to August 15th. Then under environment and pollution, we had prefer mechanical treatment of invasive species, plant species over chemical treatments. And they wanted to add where feasible, because they spray the irrigation ditch banks with glyphosate. So, and then where we added, wanted, changed the prioritized bank lowering and backwater channel guidelines. They added when climatic and hydrologic conditions permit, because I think they probably feel that the river and climate is changing seriously and they wanted that. And then under recreation, there's been much discussion about e-bike and other e-sport vehicles in the Bosque. And at this time, MRGCD is not in favor of the use of motorized vehicles on their land. This is their policy throughout their district. And concerns include the inability to enforce any speed rules as well as liability issues. I hope that you can pass these MRGCD revised guidelines so that we can all be on the same page. Thank you.
Joan. Did you have a question, Councilor Knight?
Well, I have a problem with the non-motorized. I was thinking could you just put manage as a natural area for passive, slow speed recreational activities? Instead of, and I know Councilor Parker also, talked about motorized wheelchairs. I mean, they're slow. I mean, the bikes are slow,
Well, I know personally, if you were on the levee with your e-bike pedaling, this is my personal feeling, pedaling, no one would ever ticket you. But this is their policy that they do not want to say they want to allow motorized vehicles because of their liability issues and their inability to enforce, say, a speed limit.
I think that there's kind of a bright line that they just don't want to go over.
But Mayor, thank you, Mayor and Joan, but they couldn't prohibit somebody who is ADA compliant from having a motorized wheelchair coming.
No, they couldn't, they would never, I'm
not talking about a 454 Chevy engine mounted on a wheelchair, but I'm talking about a battery operated.
right. No one would ever prohibit that.
We had a gentleman that come up before that talked about access to the Bosque, and he was having difficulty,
right,
getting into it. So I would just want to make sure we accommodate the ADA compliant group.
Yes.
I know. Truthfully, I don't think the Bosque Commission is totally in control of this process. As you well know, the Conservancy owns it. We co-manage it. We also have to participate with the fire department, the police department, the forestry department, the Corps of Engineers. I'm sure I've left some the Pueblos. So and I just think that for this area, it's very rustic, and when the pandemic was going full speed, we did have some people trying to get on there, and ATVs and motorcycles and scooters, and I'm sure that both chiefs could explain how difficult that was and damaging to the habitat. And
right.
It is really not meant to be, I guess it's more an emphasis on the kinds of things they're willing to have in that Bosque area.
Right.
So, Councilor Parker.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I voted no last time specifically because of this point that you brought up, Councilor Knight. However, you verifying MRGCD's stance on this is our rules, I think we have to follow their rules because ultimately they're the ones running the show on those ditches. And so I just want to say for the record, I think it's absolutely unfortunate that in theory, people could not use their e-bikes to ride up and down. I'm sure people will, but I think it's unfortunate that should someone want to come and ding them for it, that possibility is there.
And who knows, maybe they'll change their mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there any other questions for Joan before we take a motion and a
just-
second and a vote? Yes.
Just one
Counselor
quick
Wolf.
question. Are you comfortable with all the changes that they made, that they want to incorporate?
Yes, yes, I am.
I think it
We
was
are.
really important to tell Joan that these plants needed to be New Mexico oriented.
Well, I-
She was going to make that mistake.
Well, they were very concerned and we didn't specify because actually, you know, Santa Ana had planted box elder maples and as an experiment, we thought, well, maybe that might be a possible tree, but now Santa Ana does not like them. And so anyway, they wanted to make sure that they were going to be a native tree and that's fine.
Fair enough.
Right.
I think we need a motion. We need a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the Corrales Bosque Preserve Management Guidelines as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. I think we've had our discussion, so I'm going to take a vote. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
A half. I just, yes, but it's
Yes.
just hard, but I love my e-bike and I only go on the levee. I never go on the bus.
All right, did you hear
I'm
that?
sorry.
Chief Manchicafra, be on the lookout for a
Oh,
woman on an
hey,
e-bike.
hey.
I'm kidding. All right. Counselor Knight, yes. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Wolf?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Joe.
very much.
Thank you for coming back and we wish you speedy recovery.
Thank you.
The next item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2115. It's a resolution approving the adoption of an amended accounting policy. We have seen this item before. I don't think Raina is with us. If there are questions, Aaron can go ahead and answer them. I'd like, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2115.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank
Second.
you. Any discussion? All right, we're going to go ahead and vote. Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
All right, thank you. The next item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2116. This is a resolution approving the adoption of an amended franchise tax policy. Again, the administration, this item, I believe, has been before you, and it is in response to an audit finding, which we are not going to ever get again. And I think Aaron could probably speak to it if necessary. Do I have a motion?
I move we pass resolution 2116.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Counselor Murray.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Councilors, I was just a little bit concerned that some of the franchises didn't have current documentation. Are we pursuing that right now then, as far as the franchise?
Can you be a little bit more explicit?
Well, where did I see that at?
It's page 145
Right, 145?
in that area. There's a chart.
Yeah. I got to read the fine print here.
Try 148.
I think they were doing an audit and they had identified certain things like, I think it was Crown Castle might be, they don't have a missing, there's a missing agreement. Let's see, village was unable to locate Atlantic, Comcast, and Gravity Pad agreements. And I was just curious if you
Yeah.
are pursuing those to make
Yes,
sure that all the
and-
agreements are in place.
So the issue we were having and what has since been fixed since this audit document is what the village have been doing is those franchise agreements are on a long-term basis. We just missed the window for when they ended, but we get the option to extend. And so at this point, we have basically, we're in the process and have completed going through all of those franchise agreements, getting in touch with them and updating those contracts. So those we would hope would be done prior to even the start of the fiscal year. And so that should be completed at this point. And Crown Castle is actually going to be at the P&Z tomorrow night. And so we're already addressing it with them, but I'm sure it'll be made certain that that's the franchise is part of that discussion. discussion tomorrow as well.
So the summary of franchise tax agreements, then that kind of spreadsheet will be updated as it comes to it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second, so I'm going to take a vote. Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Knight? Aye. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the next item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2117. This is a resolution authorizing adjustments of various funds for the fiscal year 2020, 2021. We are fast approaching the end of our fiscal year, and this is a bar to make sure that all of our fund balances are correct. Do I have a motion on this?
Mayor, I move that we approve resolution 21-47.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'm going to take a vote. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Knight? Aye. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next, actually two items, but one at a time, obviously, is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2118. This is a resolution approving the participation in the Municipal Arterial Program. That's MAP. Those are the funds we get to do our roads. You can see that Michael Chavez is sitting in the back, very hopeful. Do I have a motion on this?
Mayor, I move that we approve resolution 21-018.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions for Michael?
Yeah, Mayor, if you would please.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. So I see this is going to impact, I think it's Cadillo. And
See, it was good you stayed.
if I'm correct, I think I read this right. So I just want to make sure that, so now the road's going to be rebuilt. It's going to have bike lanes, but are we also going to make allowances for equestrian riders off to either side so that they can proceed down the road?
Yes, we will, Councilor, because number one, that's where one of our equestrian crossings is, right there at the end of Cabazon and Corrales Road.
Okay, so yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you too, is that exactly where is that crossing going to be at?
The crossing itself, according to DOT, will remain in the same place, so our design will have to accommodate for that.
Does that mean where it's the narrowest, where that pole?
We're gonna take that to the engineer and he will design it.
All right, so when I talked to Bonnie Bagley about this, we wanted to kind of shift that crossing down to the south just a tad, where the irrigation ditch was at. Only because we figured the horses would have a better chance, and people might have stand a better chance getting across at that point. But I mean, I know there's another crossing not too far north of there by the old vet clinic, but I was hoping that maybe we might get that crossing moved.
Yeah, well, that's gonna go to our engineer and he'll take that into consideration.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That it?
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want to go too far because co-op funds are next. I don't know if there's any questions on that, but all right. So if there is no more discussion, we have a motion and a second. Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Knight? Aye. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2119. This is a resolution approving the participation in the 2021-2022 Local Government Road Fund. Those are our co-op funds that we use to fix our roads, and of course, we get matches for them. These are important sources of funds. Do I have a motion on this?
I move that we approve Resolution 2119.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Aye, I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item?
Yeah, one more question.
That's why I told you not to go to the back of the room.
So it used to be that the village maintained a list of roads that needed to be improved. In other words, taken from gravel to pavement. Do we still do that? Do we prioritize that list?
That's my co-op list. And I don't really have a priority on it because I let the funds match the project.
Okay, so if the money, okay, I understand where you're going with that. But I think it used to be that they kind of had a priority out, and some roads bubbled to the top and some didn't, but, okay, thank you.
Counselor Waldman?
I'm going to be asked, so I'll ask. Sagebrush, upper sagebrush paving?
It's coming, maybe sooner than we expect. I don't know, we'll see.
Okay.
Well,
If we
since
have
we're,
anything left over from Corrals Road, we'll just put it up there.
I have a
That would be nice.
since we're asking,
Oh, Councilor Lucero, everybody needs to get.
since we're asking,
Yeah.
the
okay.
continuation of Loma Larga
That'll be this year.
this year,
Yes.
It's a beautiful.
was it on
road.
there?
No, this is last year's. That was
Oh,
last
okay.
year's map.
Okay,
That's on state for this year.
okay, well, that's what I understood. I just didn't hear much about it. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions for? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight. Aye. Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you,
Aye.
Michael. Thank you very much.
You can go home now.
Okay, now, yeah. The next one is actually consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2120. This is a resolution extending the declaration of emergency in the village of Corrales due to COVID-19. And I think once we get a motion in a second, Aaron can speak to because Tanya can be here, to the reason behind this. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve 21-020.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, thank you. Aaron, would you like to explain why we are having a further emergency
Madam
deck?
Mayor, Council, the reason we're continuing this is actually consistent with what the state is recommending at this point. Basically, the biggest issue for us that we want to make sure that all of our boxes are checked is that there are still federal monies available to us, and unless we have an emergency declaration, we don't get to tap into those. So the second we let it lapse is the second we lose access to all those federal funds. That's the big thing. The other thing it allows us to do is it has language in there that basically allows us to piggyback off the state rules. We don't have to make our own. And so at the end of the day, this is just to, even though we're starting to come out of COVID, it helps protect us if we do relapse, or even when we're not in COVID, we still have the opportunity to get federal funds to help with COVID related expenses.
Councilor Murray.
Mayor, thank you, Councilor. So Aaron, if the governor says we're open for business July 1st, does this mean that the agreement terminates then, or are we continuing?
We would probably continue it. And again, that's because the access to federal funds is going to continue even after that July 1st date. The state themselves are basically saying, we're going to have an emergency declaration for a full year.
Okay.
So we'll probably see this coming back a couple times until we know that the federal funds are kind of exhausted for us.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this item? All right.
So we
Yes.
will still do what the state says. If you don't have to wear a mask or whatever, if you're outside, we will go by the state umbrella, but we'll just keep this to get those funds.
Correct. And again, there's language in there that says that we're going to follow the current public health order. So whatever the public health order is, and at some point it may just be that there is none. And so we'll modify it then to say, we'll remove that language, or we'll adopt whatever we need to.
Yep, but we're really hoping for the federal money. We're hoping to get some word by the end of the week on some of it. So, all right, we have a motion, a second, and I think no more discussion is wanted. So Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight. Aye. Councilor Parker.
Aye.
All right, the last item under the new business is the consideration, action, and approval of the option to purchase agreement of the Lopez Farm farmland preservation easement. This is a project that I know the council has seen. And I know that the clerk asked if there were any questions. Did any questions come in regarding this?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, this is very similar to the Coons, and we would pretty much take the remainder of the farmland on monies. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mayor, I move that we approve the Corrales Farmland Preservation Program Conservation Easement option to purchase agreement.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fight going on here, trying to keep it cool. All right, okay, I think hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on this. Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Parker.
Aye.
All right, the last item on this is, I did want to say that we have a resignation from the Planning and Zoning Commission that will be taking place after this month's meeting. John McCandless is resigning. Mary Chappelle has offered to join the Planning and Zoning Commission. In fact, she was frighteningly cheerful about taking this on. And I think she is a level-headed person who is currently on the Bosque Commission. And so you have her resume, and I would like to ask for.
I move we accept Mary Chappelle's application for planning and zoning.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All right, lucky Mary. Okay, I'm gonna do a vote. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
You got short and say it, I know. Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And we will send a letter to Mr. McCandless. All right, so we are down to announcements and future agenda items. We know there's going to be an agenda item regarding the LGIP items and the policies and processes, priorities of that. Aaron, do we have anything at the moment?
Very far in the future, we'll have our final budget that has to be approved by September, so that'll be coming down the pipe. We do have one other appeal coming down the pipeline as well. We'll probably be in the July 20th meeting.
Okay.
Other than that, I think Randy and I are always working on a couple policies. If we haven't done, you may see a retention policy, our HIPAA policy, and then I have been working with Randy on I'm going to call it clerk's handbook. I don't know if that's something that will need to be approved by council, but that may be. But other than that, I don't have any.
And I would really ask Councilor Murray, do you have an item?
I just want to follow up on Councilor Burkett. He's always been requesting about the fence.
Oh, I think the fence, do you think the fence ordinance, they've been working on it. Do you think it might be ready? Oh God, poor Lori. You're there behind the podium.
I just want to, since he's not here, now I know he would bring it up.
It's more or less ready to go. The Mid-Region Council of Government, whatever I'm trying to say, they recommended that it be placed in the chronological order. We're going through our chapter 18 from 0 to the end, and they recommended that it come before council in the spot where it's going to be placed. And there's one thing that we're still kind of working on, and that was we're piggybacking or basically taking what Los Ranchos did, where they allow a certain amount of solid wall along Rio Grande, and then it's open at the top, and that's all they say. And this being Corrales, we decided we better figure out what the heck we mean by open. So there is still a little tweaking, but it's more or less ready to go.
All right, we'll
It's just
see.
when we can bring it before council.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Walden, did you
No, I
have
was going to speak on behalf of Councilor Burkett as well. Same
Well,
issue.
thank you. It's good to have friends. And then, as obviously, please call Aaron, let him know that you've remembered something. These agendas tend to get a little crowded at some point, even though we're not expecting them. But I think we did a lot of good work tonight. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.